The night was a little too calm for a day that had been chaotic. The city of Odanera was still reeling from the aftereffects of the death of the great Russian mob boss, Vladimir Ivankov, who had died in the hospital, something the world was told was a murder. A cold-blooded murder. The city was slowly becoming inhabitable as the perpetrator had made a run for it. The hunt was on for the doctor, Kiyomi Kimura, who had the audacity to screw up the one surgical operation that had the ability to turn the city into a madhouse. Instead of precautions being taken, the worst had happened, and now the entire city was on a lockdown, wailing in silence for the soul of the accused doctor, as even the gods would take notes when the Russian mob was done with her. While the city was in chaos, there was tranquility in one particular section of the city. A beautiful penthouse owned by the cruelest of the cruel creatures, a faceless woman whose name lived on the lips of many. Even tonight, the cruel woman's name rested on so many lips. The name that would send even the Russian mob home because of how dangerous she was. This woman was humanity's greatest evil, and she was known to many as the Ghost. But then to others, she was someone else, someone they only ever referred to as Her Majesty. Perhaps Her Majesty would join the hunt for the accused doctor and help the mob in bringing the doctor down, right? "She's awake, Your Majesty," a voice in the distance spoke as Dr. Kiyomi struggled with the splitting headache she was dealing with, especially after everything she had experienced during the day. She wasn't sure where she was or even how long she had been here, but one thing was certain. This wasn't the rogue transpo that she had urgently hired to get her out of Odanera City Hospital after the scandal she had been thrown into. Dr. Kiyomi had paid a lot of money for that transpo, and she was certain that they would treat her well. But what she had gotten was a chlorinated handkerchief on her nose, which only gave her more headache instead of knocking her out. The damned bastards didn't even bother to check if she was completely knocked out, and had dragged her along, driven her through a city that was hunting her. "Great, let us begin then." A woman's powerful voice hit Kiyomi's ears, snapping her back to a reality where she wasn't where she was supposed to be. Whatever was happening here, she wanted no part of it, though she had a feeling she had to take part in it. "Damn. Head up, Petal. I can hear your heartbeats quickening. You're as awake as I like them," the voice added, but Kiyomi wasn't going to give in. She hadn't suffered the whole day just to be met with someone demanding she be called a majesty. What the hell was she, a queen? On this side of the realm? What a joke, yeah. "Fuck it," the good doctor said as she lifted her head, ready to get this over with. Maybe the person she had hired had been desperate to make it a kidnapping so that people would stop looking for her. But even that didn't seem like the best of ideas. "Maybe if this went well, dear, Kiyomi would ask for a refund, right? I see you have a pretty mouth on you as well. You will make the perfect pet for me," the woman said, and that got Kiyomi opening her eyes in a rush. She was sure she would go blind if she wasn't careful. When Kiyomi had called for the transpo, she had been dressed as a male night shift nurse. It was the perfect get-up for her, but as she looked at herself now, the only things on her were just the clothes she had worn, which did nothing to hide who she was. The wig she had bought was nowhere to be seen, and the long hair she had tried so hard to hide was currently free falling on her shoulders. The beard she had adorned so well was on the ground beside her. She was in all her feminine glory. Unlike the masculine get-up she had desperately tried to make a reality. If she had succeeded, she would be on the other side of the realm by now, but then the universe just had to mess with her, didn't it? "Excuse you, what the fuck do you mean by that?" Kiyomi asked irritably as she turned towards the voice, but when she saw who was talking, all the life left her lungs as she stared with an open jaw. This had to be some illusion that she was trapped in, but at the same time, the woman seemed too real to be a fake. And even if it was so, the question of what else was doing here was too much for her to comprehend. "Lost for words now, are we, Petal?" the woman said amusedly as she took in the sight of the doctor, who wasn't sure if this was real or not. There had to be an error somewhere. That was the only explanation for this. There was just no way she was here on this side of the realm. Surely there had to be better places for her to be at, right? Looking around, Kiyomi took in the sight of the place she was in. She had been expecting some fucked-up windowless warehouse with walls older than her entire bloodline, but she was surprised to find herself in what looked like a penthouse, judging by how high they were and how even the tallest of buildings looked unusually smaller. Not one to let things happen to her, Kiyomi got up to check for herself, and, true to her thoughts, she was in the one place she had sworn she would never find herself in, the one place that screamed murder for people like her. The cruel Lycan Queen's penthouse in Odanara. She was in Queen Sakura Watanabe's presence. "Who are you? What do you want with me?" Kiyomi asked, feigning ignorance, even as she looked at the royal high guards who were strategically positioned around the beautiful penthouse. If this was another day, Kiyomi would have been glad to be here. Unfortunately for her, this wasn't the time for her to fangirl over a house as beautiful as this. Perhaps if she feigned ignorance, the Mad Queen wouldn't choose her and would let her leave with her life, right? If she was being honest, the people she had been running from when she hired the transpo were bound to treat her better than the Mad Queen ever would. It was a reality that Kiyomi had lived more than once. Oh, how fate was cruel to her. "Cute," Queen Sakura commented as she eyed the good doctor from head to toe. It was like she was staring at something that she had been waiting for a while, and now that she found it, she would have her fun. "Don't call me cute. Who the hell are you, and what do you want with me? Why did your men kidnap me from where I was? What is your agenda? Come on, say something, or are your guards intimidating you?" Kiyomi ranted, with her heart in her mouth. She was scared shitless of the woman in the room, and yet somehow she was determined to run away from this woman. Maybe if she riled the queen enough times, the woman would get bored with her and let her leave. However, the queen didn't even seem the least bit bothered by Kiyomi's tantrums. If anything, she found them interesting and wanted to know more. She needed an urge that the queen couldn't explain. Maybe it was because this was the first time she had met someone who clearly knew her and her reach, someone who knew what power she held and her reputation, and yet even with all that knowledge, the doctor before her was still stubborn. "Help her to her seat," the queen ordered, and her guards didn't hesitate to roughly drag Kiyomi from the window and back into the seat directly opposite the Lycan Queen's seat like this was some sort of meeting. "Let me go." Kiyomi tried to fight, but she knew that it was pointless. She was here in the Mad Woman's den, and the only way she would leave was when she was dead, or very dead, but a girl could try, right? "Stay." One of the Queen's high guards growled at Dr. Kiyomi, who defiantly growled back at him. Kiyomi wasn't in the mood to play catch with a high guard whose only duty was to make sure she was in her place and in the right mind. "I am not a dog for you to talk to me like that. Whatever you want, I don't have. I don't have a house or a home. I don't have wealth to my name, and I don't have a family that you can threaten me with. And if you're hoping to harvest my organs, I will have you know that I made sure they are poisonous, so you won't benefit from anything. If you brought me here to burn me, then you might as well get on it." Kiyomi was forced out even though her fear was evident. She was horrified by the woman before her. She was worried that the queen could use her head as some trophy, and while it was something she couldn't get past the Mad Queen, Kiyomi was curious to know why she was here with the Mad Woman. All the good doctor had wanted was a safe passage to her next destination, a destination that now seemed like an illusion to her. She felt the blood drain off her face for the 100th time as she stared at the queen. Queen Sakura Watanabe was the devil reincarnate to some, but to everyone, she was worse than the devil. Today, she wasn't wearing her usual crown of thorns that always poked into her skin, no. She was different, almost regular. If anything, she looked like a normal crazy woman. She looked like what the humans would call a powerful woman, only that the Lycan queen used too much power and an aura that was so suffocating to the point that many who interacted with her always taught themselves to hold their breaths. "Bring the humans," the queen ordered, and Kiyomi stared at her like she had gone bonkers. Well, it wasn't too bad an assumption, seeing as everyone was scared shitless of the crazy queen. Kiyomi wasn't sure what the order of the humans was, but she had a feeling she wouldn't like it one bit. Now that her plan to feign ignorance had failed miserably, she needed to get out of this place as soon as possible. "So, you won't talk to me, great. Can I get some food then?" "I'm hungry and haven't eaten shit since morning," Kiyomi requested, and the queen chuckled in amusement as she nodded at one of the high guards who stepped out, only to come back with food. It was so unexpected, and if Kiyomi was being honest, she had expected the queen to give her a sarcastic remark or remind her of how stupid, clueless, and dumb she looked tonight, but then there was none of that. "Feeding me before she kills me. What a queen, SMH, Kiyomi whispered to herself as she stared at the food before her. Anyone in her position would be worried about their safety, but then she was hungry. She had spent the entire day playing hide and seek with the authorities, not to mention the damned mob that wanted her head for a surgery that had gone wrong. It hadn't been her fault, but she had been the scapegoat for the bastards. Now here she was, a rogue Lycan, sitting in front of her queen who despised rogues and always used them for her unhinged hunting games. A part of Kiyomi knew what was coming for her, but it was too much for her to comprehend, so she chose to focus on her hunger first. If she focused on the circumstances, she would lose her mind, and that wouldn't do her any good, seeing as she was trapped and the queen wasn't about to let her go. Nothing she said would make the woman change her mind, so Kiyomi wouldn't try. "Careful, Petal. We don't want you dying before you sign the contract now, do we?" Queen Sakura mused as she watched Kiyomi eat like the woman knew this was her last meal in both realms. Perhaps Kiyomi was overthinking and there were chances that she would make it out alive, but then the history books about the cruel Lycan queen had never really talked of any survivors of the queen. Other than her high guards, no one who went to the queen was ever seen again. It was a sad reality, one that no one could control or say anything about because they were scared of the consequences. Everyone loved their lives. Yeah, whatever. "I'm eating, so please, no more disturb. Contract?" "What contract?" Kiyomi asked, the blood on her face draining for the 100th time, as the cruel memories of the infamous Sakura contracts came back to her. She had heard the rumors while she was a rogue, and she knew that those were the contracts of doom. They were the contracts that no one ever lived out of. The contracts that always ended up with the signee dead, and dead. Those contracts always made the Lycans steer clear of the Lycan Palace and the Queen's Road because no one wanted to be married to this particular woman. No one wanted to go into that place and be forced to do whatever the hell the Queen forced people to do there. Her pretty brain finally picks up, I see. Queen Sakura chuckled darkly as the appetite left Kiyomi and her taste buds suddenly went bland. There was just no way this was what she was thinking it was, right? Looking at Queen Sakura, who had a smug look on her face, Kiyomi wanted to disappear into the night and never be seen again. The woman was giving her the kind of eyes that told Sakura that her freedom was never coming back. It was a horrifying truth, one that many people had been forced into, but Kiyomi hadn't imagined that she would be experiencing this even before she hit 30 years old. She blamed herself for spending so many years studying to end up in scandals. What contract? Kiyomi asked, and in response, the queen just let out a maniacal laugh as the food in front of Kiyomi was suddenly taken away, and in its place was a piece of paper with the words contract written in bold. But it wasn't just the word contract there that scared the hell out of Kiyomi. Maybe she was overreacting, but then if anyone knew the contents of that contract, they would have the same shocked expression on Kiyomi's face. It was the word before it. Marriage. This was a marriage contract. A Sakura Watanabe marriage contract. No. Please no, Kiyomi whispered defeatedly as she struggled to breathe. She hasn't wished for this ever. Hell, death was way better than this contract right here, and the fact that she couldn't fight it was all Kiyomi needed to know she was screwed. So, she stared at the queen, even as her breath slowly left her, as darkness called her name, and she gave in to the beautiful allure of the dark. She couldn't stay sane for this anymore because she wasn't sure she had the strength to do that. And with one last look at the Lycan queen, the good doctor fell face first on the table, unconscious. Queen Sakura looked at the woman who was lying on her table. She could tell that Kiyomi was horrified about what was to happen to her, but Sakura didn't care. She always never did when it came to her contracts. Her excuse for the contacts was that she fished out the people who brought shame to the Lycan society. And the simplest price for that was her contracts, the contract that could never be revoked. As it was, Dr. Kiyomi was the latest shameful Lycan. That was the only reason the Mad Queen had gone through all the trouble of getting this particular Lycan to her penthouse, and not even the regular prisons, yeah? I don't have time for this. Wake her up, the Lycan queen said as she looked at the woman in front of her. She looked scared and tired, like she had been running around the entire morning. For a moment there, Sakura wondered if Kiyomi really was okay or if she needed to get some rest. She wondered if there was anything she could do for the woman, but then the contract was good for both of them, right? Oh, how the queen was conflicted, however, just as fast as the little tinge of emotion surfaced in her mind, so did it disappear. It was like that was just some dream, an illusion that Sakura Watanabe had unintentionally triggered, right? Smack came the sound of huge palms hitting Kiyomi's cheeks, making the doctor wake up with a start. Ow, Kiyomi grimaced as she glared at the guard who had smacked her face. She hated everything about this place, and despite the fact that she hadn't been able to make a run for it. Now she had a Sakura contract to deal with. Damn. Sign it, the queen said as a high guard shoved the contract on Kiyomi's face, something that the doctor had been hoping to run away from. She was screwed and there was no way out of this, but then maybe this was an illusion still? No. I don't wanna, Kiyomi said defiantly as she stared right into the Lycan queen's eyes. It was already night, and the doctor knew the chances of them disposing of her body in ways that no one expected were high. On the other hand, she knew that the Lycan queen loved parading her kills. The woman never had anything she did, which was also why Kiyomi knew that the entire Odanera would know about what the queen did to her. If she didn't sign the contract. I won't ask again, Petal, the queen said, and the high guard grabbed Kiyomi's hands and forced the pen there. They had surrounded her, something that Kiyomi had yet to release. Her fate was in the Lycan queen's hands, but then what if? I won't sign this, Kiyomi insisted, making the Lycan queen task before the circle around Kiyomi opened up and she was forced to look at the humans in the corner. But they were not just any humans. They were familiar faces, her colleagues from Odanera Hospital. The same people she worked with every morning and night. The same people the hospital wouldn't ever survive without, because they were in her team of specialist surgeons. If these specialist surgeons were taken out, the city would be in a mess, and even worse, the country would take a hit that no one would ever know how to fill up, seeing as most of them were specialized in delicate surgeries. Oh, Petal, I wasn't asking. You will marry me, the queen said, and Kiyomi scoffed at the absurdity of the statement. She had a life that didn't revolve around this queen and her madness. Surely there had to be a way she could free herself or whatever this was, right? You will murder innocents just because of a contract? You can get anyone you want, literally anyone, and yet you choose me? You're insane, Kiyomi said, only for one of the high guards to smack her face with his palm once again, leaving marks on her cheeks. "You will respect the queen," the high guard said, and Kiyomi scoffed. She had been out of the Lycan lands for years now. Kiyomi had come to seek shelter in Odanera because this was the one place she was sure she was safe in. The ghosts of her past were too much for her, and she had a choice to leave home and come here, or stay home and be murdered with the rest of her family. That wasn't much of a choice for her, so she ran when the last of them was taken out. Maybe it had been a selfish decision, but the queen was staring at her almost like she knew something that Kiyomi didn't know of, reminded Kiyomi of the time she had lost everything. This was dangerous on so many levels, but then for Kiyomi, here standing in front of the queen was already a sentence for her. She was a rogue, one without a home, a rogue that hadn't officially requested a transfer, something that Queen Sakura disposed of more than even the murderers and thieves in her realm. "You still won't sing?" the queen asked, and Kiyomi stared at her defiantly. "No, I won't," Kiyomi insisted. "Bring the pale one," the queen ordered her high guard when walked over to where the surgeons were wearing and dragged the cardiologist. They needed that woman more than anything in Odanera, but then the Lycan queen didn't care about that. "Look well, Petal. This is what happens when you defy me," the queen said as she clawed the doctor's heart, before chopping off her head and letting it roll on the floor, something that got Kiyomi shaken. "No!" Kiyomi cried out in pain. She wasn't sure what she was expecting, but the Lycan queen doing this was certainly not it. What happened to not harming humans? Then again, if the Lycan queen was one to follow the laws, Kiyomi wouldn't be here, yeah? Queen Sakura was a soulless, crazy Lycan queen, a woman known to screw everyone for her fun. Everything she touched always got ruined, and Kiyomi was watching that firsthand. The fact that the queen was excited about this was unsettling for Kiyomi. Perhaps she should have just agreed to whatever she wanted, right? "I could kill everyone for you, Dr. Kiyomi Kimura. Is that really a theory you want to keep testing? All you have to do is sign the paper and agree to be my wife, and I will let these useless humans be," Queen Sakura said, and Kiyomi sighed. Her colleagues were shaken and scared of what was happening. Kiyomi could see the questions in their eyes and their pleas for mercy. She could see the moment it dawned on them that their lives were in the hands of Kiyomi. It was a task so unexpected, but then what else was there for the Lycan doctor? What could she do to save her team? Or would she make the choice and save herself from the cruelest contracts to ever exist? "Wait. Please. Wait," Kiyomi said right as another high guard shot the next doctor right in the head, making her watch as the body slumped on the floor, lifeless. She was forced into a contract that wouldn't favor her, for reasons she didn't even know of. "Wait. Please. Wait," Kiyomi said right as another high guard shot the next doctor right in the head, making her watch as the body slumped on the floor, lifeless. She was forced into a contract that wouldn't favor her, for reasons she didn't even know of. Kiyomi was desperate for answers regarding all of this and the queen's insistence, but then the lives that were in her hands were more desperate. And so the doctor made the choice that she never would have made willingly. It wasn't even a choice at this point, but she could tell the Lycan queen couldn't care less about what Kiyomi thought about the moment. This was nothing but a game for the Mad Queen, and Kiyomi was a forced participant. "No more. Please, I'll sign the contract. Please, don't kill anyone anymore," Kiyomi begged, and the queen chuckled darkly again while the high guards who were lined up behind the doctors held their blades tighter. They were ready to roll those heads if the doctor didn't do what the queen wanted, and he wouldn't compromise for that. It didn't matter how long this would take, and regardless of everything, Kiyomi had to make the choice the queen wanted of her. "Are you sure you don't want to play games with me? This is getting interesting for me, Petal. Can I just kill another?" the queen teased, and Kiyomi stared at her with tear-filled eyes, silently pleading for the impossible while hoping for the possible. "If you kill another, I will take my life," Kiyomi voiced. Queen Sakura stared amusedly at her, though Kiyomi could have sworn she had seen sudden hurt in the queen's eyes for a split second. Then again, the queen was staring at Kiyomi like she was the dumbest of them all, or she was overestimating her importance in the queen's presence. She was gambling her life in front of a queen who didn't care about what was right or wrong, a queen who only cared about her games and showed mercy to one. Kiyomi was pushing her luck, and she would eventually learn it the hard way. All right then. Do it, the queen ordered, and the high guards killed all the doctors in the room, while she stared at Kiyomi, who was not expecting the turn of events. Maybe because she had been hoping she was so important to the queen given she wasn't in the Lycan prisons already. Maybe she had been counting on the fact that the queen felt something for her and wouldn't kill people if she threatened her own life, seeing how the queen was adamant about having her sign the contract. However, Kiyomi was simply forgetting something. Queen Sakura Watanabe was never one to be threatened. Sakura hadn't gotten to where she was right now just because someone wanted her to follow orders. The queen was a force to be reckoned with. She was the power that people feared and hoped to never cross, and Kiyomi had done that tonight. They are dead now. I think you're next. That is if you are a woman of your words, Petal, Queen Sakura said excitedly as her high guards chuckled at the shocked state of the doctor they had brought home to their queen. What? Kiyomi asked, her voice trembling as she watched the dead bodies of the people who had given her shelter in the hospital. They had been nothing but kind to her. These people had loved her and even brought her food from their homes. They had been considerate of her even when they knew that there was something completely different about her. They hadn't judged her, and yet as it was, their kindness was repaid by their murders. This was something that Kiyomi would never recover from. Maybe if she hadn't tried to run from the hospital earlier, maybe her friends would still be alive. Then again, what were the chances that she would be alive now? There were so many things wrong with the situation, and Kiyomi was in shock. If she had been scared earlier, she was horrified by the Dark Queen now. Her recklessness had cost the lives of the people she cared about. You said if I kill another you will take your life. I killed 5 doctors, I bet it's your turn. Or do you need my help, Petal? The queen asked daringly, and Kiyomi stared at the queen before turning to the paper before her. She could see it stained with her tears, how the paper had gotten wrinkly and the ink on it had become soaked. Kiyomi could see the blurry lines on the piece of paper and the pen beside it, and she felt her heart sink once again. A part of Kiyomi hoped that maybe if the paper was wrinkly enough, the cruel queen would let her be. Maybe Sakura would be bored of the weak Lycan and decide on someone else, but then Queen Sakura had made her selection already. I hate you, Kiyomi said as she angrily wiped her tears with the back of her hand. I don't care, Petal. Sign the damn contract, Queen Sakura demanded, her voice so cold and grim. Kiyomi could tell that the queen was tired of this. Maybe if Kiyomi pushed just a little harder the queen would let her be, right? Screw you, Kiyomi cursed at the queen. Don't worry, Petal. I will fuck you enough times that you won't think of anything other than me, Queen Sakura responded amusedly while Kiyomi signed the marriage contract. She hated that her hand was forced and, even worse, that she wasn't sure of what she would be getting out of this contract. She should have read the terms of the agreement, but then her friends' lives had been hanging in the balance. She eventually lost them all, and she had nothing to go back to anyway. Her life was messed up from the moment the day had begun, and maybe this devil she had been married to would take her life faster than the mess she was entangled in, right? You did great, Petal. Now go to bed, sweetheart, while I fix the mess you got yourself into, Queen Sakura said, and Kiyomi stared at her wondering what the hell the woman was talking about. She had lost her free will, and the queen was talking about fixing the mess she had gotten herself in? Either this woman was insane, or she was just a bored queen who loved terrorizing people. Knock yourself out, Kiyomi responded sarcastically as she stared right into the queen's eyes. showing her spite for the woman. Anyone would have been dead for that simple action, but instead, the Lycan queen simply leaned forward and gently kissed Kiyomi on the forehead. "Take her to my room. The rest of you with me. We have a mafia mob to have fun with," the queen said to her high guards, who all read themselves to do whatever they had been assigned. "Don't miss me too much, petal wifey," Queen Sakura said to Kiyomi before she stepped out with the other high guards. Now that Kiyomi looked at the Lycan queen, she could see that the woman was the same age as she was, if not older by a year. Sakura Watanabe had every hint of crazy on her, and even then somehow still oozed power you would think everywhere was her playground. She was dangerous in every way, and Kiyomi wasn't sure why Queen Sakura was helping her, but she could only hope for freedom. Then again, what was freedom when she had jumped from escaping the mob right into the hands of the woman who screamed horror at everything she did? Maybe her fate was tired of her too, right? "You wish," Kiyomi mumbled as the guards watched her skeptically. They could see she was a little nuts, but then what else could they expect of someone whose friends they murdered right before her? "This way, Your Highness," one of the high guards said to Kiyomi as helped her out of the room they currently were in, the same room filled with her friends' dead bodies, to a larger room, one that could hold 3 operation rooms. "Great, just great," Kiyomi sighed when the high guard left without saying anything else and locked her inside. Was she that volatile for them to be wary of her? And what the hell did their mad queen mean when she said she would sort things out with the Russian mob? What was Queen Sakura's true agenda when she had forced Kiyomi to marry her? Oh, how Kiyomi missed the life she had been living at the hospital before shit went down. But maybe there was hope for her, yeah? Hope for what though? "Kiki. Everyone is looking for you," a worried woman in a doctor's uniform shouted as she frantically walked into the chief surgeon's office. She looked like the world had gone to shit, and she had just heard about it herself. It was already afternoon, and Odanara City Hospital, just like every other hospital in the city, was busy with patients. It was something usual for them, but then today, there was something else, something that had eyes on her. "Kiki. It's still morning. Go away." Kiyomi whined as she covered her head with her duvet in the hope that she could mute the woman. She was a doctor on leave, and there was no reason for anyone to be looking for her anyway. That was policy. "You don't understand me," the doctor who had barged into the office said as she shut the door behind her, like she was running from something. Well, if it was another pandemic, Kiyomi would deal with it later. There was nothing more important to her than the sleep he had earned after months and months on the job. Surely she could at least have some peace of mind when on her leave, right? "I swear to the gods, if you don't fucking shut up, Alif, you will be the next patient on my table, and I'll be removing your brain cells, sister." "Leave me the fuck alone," Kiyomi whined as she tossed and turned on the inflatable mattress she always lay on. Unlike all the other days when Dr. Kiyomi Kimura was busy with neurosurgery, today she was taking a break, leave, and she was expecting that her best friend could at least let her enjoy her leave. It had taken a lot of time for Kiyomi to get this leave, and now that she finally got it, she wasn't about to sacrifice it. Especially since today was just the second day of her 1-week leave. She was determined to spend the rest of her 7-day leave taking care of herself and grooming herself well so she wouldn't look so haggard when she walked into the operating room next time. She didn't want her patients to go into shock because of her. "You're in trouble, Kiki. The hospital, the police, everyone is looking for you. Where the hell are you?" Elif asked frantically as she drew the curtains of the doctor's door, after checking that she had locked it for the 10th time in the past minute alone. She knew this office was the first place to be searched. Honestly, she hoped there was a way out of whatever hell had just struck them today. It was all so unexpected and fast, but what else could they do? "Oh, great, they finally knew my worth and are giving me a raise? Oh, you sweet thing. I'll finally buy you that rover you've been staring at in the showrooms. Just give me a month. Kiyomi said as she snuggled under her duvet. She still needed to sleep, and besides, she wasn't surprised that her best friend was in her office like this. Her best friend was a dramatic ass who always over-exaggerated everything, but then she made Kiyomi's life better, so she loved her nonetheless. "You are not listening to me, Kiki. Someone killed a mob boss in the operating room, and they mentioned your name as the operating surgeon," Elif said, her voice so serious and frustrated that all the sleep disappeared from Kiyomi's eyes, making the good doctor sit up. Surely she didn't hear Elif right, yeah? Kiyomi Kimura had not stepped into the OR for 2 days now, and all her patients were reassigned, so it was absurd that she would be forced to take the fall for an absurdity like that. "Hold on. A surgery I did? All my patients are in the general ward now." "What do you mean?" Kiyomi asked, struggling to get in touch with her reality, because she had been careful with everything she did in Odanara. Her career in Odanara had been spotless and clean. She had dotted every I and crossed every T just because mistakes were things she couldn't afford, not when she was here, and certainly not like this. Mistakes meant Kiyomi was putting lives on the line, but more than anything, mistakes meant her name would bring back the ghosts of the old that she was running away from and had tried to outlive. Oh, Kiyomi couldn't afford mistakes, and yet here she was, hearing that something had happened, something that had caused a storm, and somehow she had found herself in the middle of the madness. There had to be some misunderstanding, right? "Watch this," Elif sighed as she grabbed the remote off Kiyomi's desk and turned the TV in her office on for her. At first, Kiyomi wasn't sure what to expect, but when she saw the headlines and the fact that there were familiar faces, all the blood drained from her face. There was a medical malpractice in Odanara, someone had died, and Kiyomi Kimura was named. Dr. Kiyomi Kimura kills Vladimir Ivankov, the Russian mob boss, in what seemed to be a retaliatory surgery. Odanara Hospital confirms the death of Vladimir Ivankov in a press conference. Killer Dr. Kiyomi Kimura, blamed for the increasing unrest in the city following the press conference by Odanara Hospital. Southern Odanara currently thrown into chaos because of Vladimir Ivankov's murder at Odanara by Dr. Kiyomi Kimura. No, Kiyomi mumbled defeatedly as she hoped that this was just another prank her friend was pulling on her, but it didn't look like it. This was on the mainstream national channel, something that the entirety of the city could watch, and the nation too. Determined to prove that this was a prank even though she was sure it wasn't, Kiyomi grabbed the remote from her best friend and increased the volume. She needs to hear it all, and well, she needed to know it wasn't her, but then she had been named already. It was all over, and the presser was repeating itself over and over. They were scrutinizing her, blaming her, questioning how she really was and what notice she had to kill the Russian mob boss in a city that was ruled by the mafia. "We have considered all the factors that will affect the hospital and the country following the death of one Mr. Vladimir Ivankov, who died on the operating table due to neglect by the operating surgeon, by Dr. Kiyomi Kimura. It is unfortunate that we have to name the surgeon like this, but we cannot afford to lose the hospital and subject the patients to the rough treatment following the mistakes of one neurosurgeon. The hospital will cooperate with the investigation with the Russian mob and the Odanara City Police. Our doctor will also cooperate, so I hope we can maintain a healthy working environment and a hospital that cares for its people. We apologize sincerely for the loss of Mr. Ivankov. My condolences to the parties affected, and we hope the police can give justice to Mr. Ivankov," Dr. Zayden, the hospital chief said in the press conference before the questions began swirling around. As she watched the mess unfold, Kiyomi wasn't sure she had heard the hospital chief well. There was just no way that they were pinning a failed surgery on her when she had not even been there the whole time. Was her sleep a joke to them, and even worse, her life? It It doesn't make any sense. Satan knows I'm on leave. She was the first person I told. And the Russian mob boss Ivankov? I warned them that the surgery was risky and that it could never happen. I wanted them to risk the fatality and told them not to consider doing it anywhere. The man was dying already and had 5 months to live without that operation. With the operation, he would have 0. What the fuck happened out there? Kiyomi wondered, her eyes still fixed on the TV. This was the worst thing she could have heard of, but the more she watched and listened, the more she was sure this was her hell. The hospital was cruel for this. They had done her dirty, and she wasn't ever going to be able to get out of this freely. I'm a dead woman, Kiyomi muttered as she plopped on the couch in her office. I'm a dead woman, Kiyomi muttered as she plopped on the couch in her office. She wasn't sure when everything had gone to hell and how they had come to choose her for this, but she was sure someone really wanted to stay hidden. Kiyomi thought back to everything she had done to stay out of the limelight, everything she had sacrificed, her freedom, her hobbies, her life. It all meant nothing at this point. Maybe she should have let herself live more. She should have enjoyed the little freedom she would have had then. But now here she was, 5 years of blood, sweat, and tears, all reduced to a lot of nothing. There was never going to be a way for her to recover from this, and she needed to find a way out, one that didn't involve her life being on the line. But wasn't it already anyway? Who did the surgery then? They are staying with you, but the stench in here looks like you haven't left this place in 3 days. Why would they do that to you? You're the neurosurgeon with the highest success rates. So why now? Elif asked as she stood beside her best friend who was still deep in thought, unsure of what life meant for her anymore. Elif was a doctor just like Kiyomi, and she was aware of just how much this sudden spotlight meant to Kiyomi. She had watched Kiyomi live in the hospital since the first day that she had come to this place. Her friend was one of the best surgeons and the best neurosurgeon in the state, so it just didn't make any sense that she could have fucked up that badly. Someone wanted her to be there, and now the Seas are the target of the Russian mob, a group of animalistic humans who killed first and asked questions later. The Russian mob was hell on earth for the humans. They were the definition of madness, and if there was someone whose madness could be compared to the Russian mob, then Kiyomi could easily place them a little too close to the Mad Queen, Sakura Watanabe. That woman was the devil herself, and she was nothing anyone would want to be close to. Did you bring food? Kiyomi asked Elif, who stared at her, wondering what the hell was wrong with her best friend. She was panicking on her friend's behalf, and Kiyomi was staring at the TV, her eyes hooded almost like she wanted to cry but couldn't let her tears. The slumped shoulders and defeated expression on Kiyomi's face were also something that reminded Elif that her best friend was considering a whole lot of everything in her head. Life wasn't being fair to the woman who had made so many sacrifices, but what else could she do? What else was Elif supposed to do to help her friend when everyone was after her? Are you serious? Your name is all over the press. It's just a matter of time before the Russian mob fills up this hospital, and the police too, and did I mention the medical inspectors? And all you are asking for is food? Elif asked incredulously. Her friend was going through a hard time. She was trying so badly, but then they needed to figure out a way around this. Kiyomi had suffered more than she needed to, and that wasn't what she deserved at the end of the day. Elif was willing to make it all make sense for Kiyomi, but they could only ever do that if Kiyomi was out of the hospital before the hunters came for her. Everyone wanted her dead now, and an escape was the best way out of this. You failed to add the Bogdan Lycans to the list, Elif. Oh, and the mad Lycan queen who hates rogues. I am a dead woman either way. My last name is out there. My hunters will know where I am. The Lycan queen will kill me for being a rogue in the human lands. The Bogdan Lycans will kill me for that day. The Russian mob will kill me for the death of their master, and the government will probably jail me for life or even death. The least I can do is eat, don't you think? Besides, as you said, my freedom is over. I might as well be harassed on a full stomach, Kiyomi admitted sadly, and a leaf slumped beside her. This wasn't fair, and they both knew it. The Kimura last name was bound to bring hordes of monsters towards Kiyomi, something that she had tried to hide from for years. She had lived in this very hospital to avoid cases like these. She never took on risky surgeries with high mortality rates because she never wanted her name out there. And yet someone had screwed her over, so she was a wanted woman by everyone who could think of her. Oh, Kiyomi. We need to get you out of her, Kiki. You're innocent, and we can prove that. But only if you're alive. Come on, Elif said as she got up and started packing a backpack for her best friend. She wasn't ready to lose Kiyomi, and it was understandable, seeing as Kiyomi was the person who had been there for her through thick and thin. It didn't matter that there were so many people out there. Kiyomi had been like a sister to her, and while Elif had offered to house Kiyomi, the doctor had kindly declined. Well, Kiyomi had enough money to buy the entire hospital she was working in, but then she had a past. A past that always haunted her. A past that would never forgive her, and now she has a troublesome present to deal with. Even if I run and prove my innocence, my name is already out there, Elif. They know. The Bogdan Lycans will be coming for me. My last name is out there, sister. Let's just sit here and wait for them to come. Or you can leave first. I don't want you being implicated in this mess, Kiyomi said, and Elof stared at her with teary eyes. Elif had watched the good doctor work her ass off to make sure patients went back home to their families, and she had always succeeded. She had always done what she thought was best, and each time she had succeeded. But now she was in deep shit. I'm not leaving you here like this, Elif said defiantly before she changed the channel to National Geographic. She was going to find a way to get Kiyomi to safety, but first, they ended up finding a change in the mood because the mess out there and the calm, sad state there wasn't helping her think. She needed to think like someone with hope, even if Kiyomi wasn't willing to give hope a chance. Why did you do that? I was watching the news, Kiyomi whined, and Elif just stared at her sadly. Even animals have more empathy than the bastards who just sentenced you to a fate worse than death. I'll go get you food, but first, you need to get out of this office. Know a pathway out of this office. Come along, Elif said. Kiyomi stared at her amusedly like this was the cutest thing she had heard from her best friend. Kiyomi was sure this office didn't have a secret passageway. She had lived and worked here for over 5 years. So, there was just no way that it was possible, right? I created one for you in case the purple ringway form came to find you. I studied the blueprints, and as it turns out, there are tunnels under this building. But we have to lift the bathtub, Elif said, and Kiyomi let out a laugh. In all the time she had known Elif, she had never seen the woman this serious. Not even when Elf was having a bad day and her surgeries were dressing her out. Elif was always happy, always smiling and careful not to show any other emotions. It was like she had wanted to be the best for Kiyomi, but Kiyomi never wanted her to lose her smile in the process, so Kiyomi always tried her best to be there for life. Funny how right now Elif was leading and Kiyomi was following with amusement on her face. But then again, no one ever thought there would be a tunnel under this hospital, yeah? You cannot be serious, Kiyomi said, but Elif was way past making jokes. She was ready to flip the world for her best friend, and maybe that would make her a target of the people who were seeking out Kiyomi, but what else was there? Kiyomi wouldn't ever be able to talk Elif out of this anyway. No, Kiki. I am not playing games with you. Come with me, Elif said as she led the way to Kiyomi's washroom. The good doctor wasn't sure what she was expecting, but when Elif stood right beside her bathtub and stared at her, Kiyomi was sure her friend was Nitz. There was no way there was a tunnel under her the whole time she lived in this hospital and especially in this office. Surely she could have found out, right? Use your Lycan strength to push the tub to the side, Elif said, and Kiyomi just did as ordered, and true to Elif's word, there was a lean tile that covered a passageway. Elif knew who and what Kiyomi was. She understood everything about her because she had proven to Kiyomi countless times that the rogue Lycan could trust her. It hasn't been easy at first, with Kiyomi being selective of the people she interacted with, not to mention Kiyomi knowing nothing about human interactions. But then together, they learned more about each other and how to adapt to their environments. There were days when Kiyomi let Elif see into her head and see what the Lycan kingdom was like, and it was something that got Elif with mixed feelings, with the one thing standing out, the need to keep Kiyomi safe and even her secrets. Don't tell me I'll be swimming in my pee to get to the tunnel. If that's so, just let them catch me, please, Elif. Kiyomi whined dramatically, and Elif gently pushed her to the side, not ready to deal with her dramatic best friend. This wasn't the time for all the theatrics, and they needed to work that out as soon as possible. The hospital guards would soon be at the door of their office, and they would need to find a way out. Elif began right as they heard bangs at the door. They were loud and intent, with Kiyomi's name being called out. Funny how they suddenly knew Kiyomi was the doctor sleeping in the hospital on most days, and yet they couldn't keep in mind that she had been on leave, and the women loved her sleep on her leave days. Humans were twisted, and that was a reality Kiyomi had gotten to learn over the years, so this was not surprising to her anymore. She would find a way out of this, eventually. Shit, they are here, Elif said as she looked for some button under the tile. It wasn't clear what she was looking for, but Kiyomi knew they were out of time. Leave it, Elif, Kiyomi said, but Elif wasn't one to give up. She hasn't come this far just to watch her best friend be subjected to a cruel fate. It wouldn't be fair, and if there was something Elif had learned about the Lycans and their mad queen, was the fact that they were brutal beings that wouldn't show mercy. Sure, the Lycan mob was no match for them, but the Bogdan Lycans terrified Elif because of what she had learned about them. She hated that if the left shirt as it was, Kiyomi would be forced to experience shit that she couldn't even explain to anyone. It was not fair at all. No, we're so close. I can buy you time. But I need you out of here, Elif insisted, and Kiyomi stared at her best friend. She could see how disturbed Elif was, and she hadn't wanted this for her. This wasn't the fate she had wanted to see for Elif. We don't have time, Elif. I need you to listen to me, all right? Kiyomi said as she shook Elif, bringing her back to the land of the living. Elif was frustrated and desperate to save her friend, and it was actually nice of her, but they were running out of time. Okay. Just please don't turn yourself in, Kiki, please, Elif begged, and Kiyomi sighed, pulling her into a hug. She didn't want to break her friend's soft heart, so she would just do as Elif hoped. No, I won't. I will find a way out of the hospital. But you need to go back to your station. I will come and find you. I promise. You know I never broke a promise, right? Kiyomi said, and Elif stared at her defeatedly. This wasn't how life was supposed to go for the Lycan who had been good to them and saved their access to Odanera Hospital more than once. But then again, all good things always have an ending, right? Perhaps this was Kiyomi's end here. But Kiki Elif tried. The risks were getting greater, and it wasn't making this any better for the both of them. Listen. They're about to break the door, so I'll need you to focus. Where do you always go when you have breaks like now? Kiyomi asked, and Elif stared at her in confusion. It was as expected, seeing as Elif always spent her time with Kiyomi. In your office, Elif said, and Kiyomi sighed. Anywhere else? Kiyomi asked. The resident rooms, Elif said, and Kiyomi just nodded, before she held Elif tightly like they were simply jitsu friends hugging. They heard the front door to Kiyomi's office open, and they knew they were screwed 1,000 times over. Elif was sure they would be caught in the process, but right before the washroom door opened, They teleported to the resident rooms, the one place where the medical residents got to rest when they had a rough day. You can rest here for now. I'll make it seem like you have been sleeping here for a while. I will take care of my thighs and reach out to you. No matter what happens, do not look for me, Elif. When the time's right, I will come and find you. All my human savings are in your name as always. Use the money as wisely as you would wish to. Get the rover for yourself, sister, and happy birthday, Elif. I have to go now, Kiyomi said before she cast a sleeping spell on Elif, before her best friend could even say goodbye. She was sadly aware that Elif wouldn't like that when she woke up, but then Kiyomi waxed out of time. She needed to find a way out of here fast, and she needed to keep herself hidden and so well. So with one last kiss on Elif's forehead, and her scent still masked, Kiyomi teleported to the server room. She needed answers on who had put her in that predicament. She needed to know why it was courageous to mess with her life like that. They're really making her take the fall. Humanity sure is cruel, Kiyomi heard one of the guards say as she hid behind the huge servers. She was aware that this wasn't the best solution for her, but then what else could she do? She needed answers. The server room had everything that she needed to prove that she was innocent, but hearing those guards talk didn't make her any more hopeful about this madness. She is losing everything she had and did not have and all because of something she didn't do. I have been watching her in that office. The doctor hasn't left her for 2 days now. It doesn't make any sense, another said as they stared at the ruckus the hospital was in at the moment. Everyone was looking for Kiyomi. The guards may have been her best chance at freedom, but Kiyomi knew better than to put their jobs at stake. There was nothing that could save her from this mess she was in at the moment. Granted, she would fix her name and get back her reputation as the good neurosurgeon that she was, but then with her name out there in the world, the wonky thing that mattered right now was for her to survive. She needed to make sense of everything that was happening to her, and no matter how the world worked, she was screwed through and through. They deleted the footage for the entire day. Even this is not recorded. I don't know what they are playing at, but I hope Dr. Kiyomi has the universe on her side. She is wanted by the Russian mob for killing their master, the first guard said. The two guards sighed together before they went on to talk about the mess that had taken place in the hospital. It was nothing that anyone normally would want to be caught up in, but with the chaos around them now, Kiyomi didn't stand a chance. Learning about the deleted footage killed Kiyomi's soul, and at the same time, it proved that she was being set up and that the hospital administration knew about it from the onset. However, it didn't explain the whys. There was no reason for the hospital to set up its best neurosurgeon, a skill set that was rare in the country. If anything, there were only 2 of the best in the entire nation, so this is just as messed up. Odanara Hospital knew Kiyomi's value, and yet they had managed to throw her under the bus? For what, though? What catch was there that could be worth making life a little harder for everyone in the entire city and even the country? The city of Odanara didn't deserve this type of chaos. So defeatedly, Kiyomi went to the male residents' rooms and hid there. It was the only place she could sleep and wait this out until the sun went down and everyone got tired of looking for her. When night came, she could find a way out, and hopefully, she wouldn't be stuck with the madness, right? I got you a transpo. Everyone in the van will be on their own, so if you see a male driver or male anything here, run, Kiki. Don't wait, Elif messages Kiyomi sometime later on the burner phone they shared. She knew Kiyomi would have it, and when Kiyomi responded with a love you, she knew they were set. It wasn't what Elif would have wanted, but seeing as the hospital was still hunting Kiyomi, not to mention the mafia was trickling into the hospital, it was just more than she could take. Do you know where she is? One of the officers had asked Elif when the doctor came from the resident rooms. Elif looked sleepy as hell, and like she had been sleeping the entire day. So, when they questioned her, She just gave the man a state that asked if the soft blanket lines on her face were wet, not enough to tell them that she had been so out of touch with reality for several years now. Of course, Kiyomi had told Elif of the deleted footage, and that worked in both their favor as Elif dared to tell them to check the footage. She knew there wouldn't be any backup seeing as this had been a dangerous setup, but damn, she wished her best friend wouldn't be the scapegoat in this mess. Night did come by so fast, and in all that time, there was no communication for Elif. They both knew that if caught, Elif would be forced to confess and try to find where Kiyomi was, and that was too dangerous for her. There was no way around this anyway. The transpo is here. Goodbye for now, my sweet Elif, Kiyomi texted before she twisted the burner phone and threw it in the bin, given that it was nighttime and she was still being hunted. The hospital was crazed by authorities and the Russian mob who were demanding answers from the administration. Everyone was alert and waiting for the good doctor to show up and give a statement of defense or anything, but they didn't see her. Then again, they were looking for a woman while Kiyomi was dressed as a night shift male nurse. She even had rounds in the hospital. She attended to patients, conveniently covering herself. If she had stayed idle, they would have been focused on finding a doctor who was idle or a woman who seemed to be out of place. But no one was looking for a male night shift nurse who had bags under his eyes and was doing rounds right. The number of times Kiyomi had walked around the members of the Russian mob in the Odanera hospital was uncountable, and she hoped that they did try to kill her. She didn't have night strength to even fight them. She was just a girl, after all, right? So when she saw the van pull up for the window of the room she was in, Kiyomi made her way to the back door and patiently waited for them to come closer. This was her chance at a better life. She had abandoned the backpack that Elif had packed for her earlier, because that would be too much. She had come to the human lands with nothing but the clothes on her, and if she took anything with her, it would all be suspicious. Thank you for coming on such short notice, Kiyomi said when the van door opened, only for her to see men in the van. They were dressed in all black and covered from head to toe. The transpo that Elif had gotten her was a food truck that was usually coming to the hospital during the night, so Kiyomi knew this wasn't it. However, before she could even say a word, she was stuffed into the back of the van and knocked out. The only thing she could remember was the fact that they had been Lycans, and with her history, Elif couldn't have gotten her a Lycan transpo. That would have blown her cover in an instant. Then again, here she was, with the Lycan queen and her mad warriors, and the worst part of it, she was married to the mad woman without a soul. Now, let me out of here, Kiyomi cried out to the guards as she banged the door to the room she had been trapped in. It was a beautiful room really, and it looked like the kind of room fit for a queen, but Kiyomi didn't want this. She didn't want to be here, and the sooner the mad queen listened to her, the sooner she would be on her way. But then Kiyomi knew that was just a lonely dream of hers. No one was going to come for her. Tell that stupid queen of yours to come get me out of here, Kiyomi shouted over and over. She had lost track of time and fell asleep in between. But then she couldn't get any sleep. Her mind was haunted by the sight of her colleagues dead on the floor. She had been the reason nothing would ever be the same, and maybe the queen killing her would be the perfect way to sort this out, right? So Kiyomi screamed as she called out for the Lycan queen. She wasn't sure how long she could do this, but she wanted to escape her mind. She needed to do something, anything just to make her feel like she wasn't going insane, even though a part of her was certain she had lost her mind more than once. But when could she really be blamed for this? I've only been gone an entire night and you're already being to see me. You miss me that much, Petal? Queen Sakura smirked when she pushed the door open and Kiyomi fell face first into her chest. Ugh, Kiyomi complained when she hit her head on the queen's chest, before instantly pulling back like she hated it there. Well, she wouldn't exactly be blamed, especially when the queen had murdered some of the people she cared about. Is something on my face? Kiyomi asked when there was a long, uncomfortable, loud silence between the two of them. She had been expecting Queen Sakura to give her a snarky response and even threaten her, but the woman was just standing there staring at Kiyomi's face like this was the first time she was seeing it. Hey, great, she probably thinks I'm insane now, Kiyomi muttered angrily as she went to sit back on the bed. She could stand the sight of Sakura being here with her, and yet she couldn't even send the woman away. But then the silent stare the queen was giving her got Kiyomi curious. Queen Sakura Watanabe was a monster, and she had accepted that. All her life she had strived to be a menace to everyone and show them just how powerful she was. No one knew what motivated her to be such a cruel creature, but then she didn't care. She knew everyone would eventually keep talking and talking. She had heard rumors about her that put the devil to shame. There were days when she stepped out of her palace just to shut what her people said of her, and the answer was always the same. They thought of her as the devil. And so, to prove them right, Sakura became the Mad Queen, the intolerable woman who did everything she wanted just because she could. Because the one thing that many despised and yet were too scared to say shit to. She knew they despised her and always wanted to take her life, but then she was Sakura Watanabe. Only the blind would try to mess around with her, but even they had ears that taught them what Sakura was. She was the darkness that even the darkness feared. So, when Kiyomi had fallen face first on her chest, Sakura had expected the usual emptiness, the blank spaces that had always been there regardless of who stumbled on her. But it was different, and for the first time, that scared her. Is something on my face? Sakura heard Kiyomi ask, but then her mind wasn't even on the woman who clearly had spite for her. Instead, it was focused on the little thing in her chest that was pumping a little too hard, and for the first time, actually functioning. Sakura couldn't remember the last time she'd felt her heart beat, literally. She always believed that she was some sort of a vampire cursed to lead the Lycans, but then today was different. Vampires didn't have a heartbeat, sure, but then Sakura was without a soul or even a heart. Sakura was made to believe that from the very first day she had learned to talk. There was nothing good about her. Her mother had said it one too many times. Even when Sakura clawed her mother's heart out, the woman's sentiment had remained the same. Her insistence on her daughter not having a soul was louder than anything Sakura had ever heard. And those words haunted her more than she could ever admit to anyone who cared to listen to the Queen of Chaos. Sakura had been born to a Lycan family, so it just didn't make any sense to her. Of course, she wanted to find an excuse for this, but how could she expand the fact that she had felt an ache the moment she had seen Kiyomi? Guards. Sakura called out to her high guards who were outside the door, waiting for her as usual. Tonight, they were closer, ready to defend their queen in case the mad woman she had kidnapped decided to play some sick game. Your Majesty, Ataru, the Lycan Queen's enforcer greeted as she rushed into the room and saw Sakura on one side of the room while Kiyomi was seated on the bed, her face scrunched as she took in the sight of the guards. It was something that Kiyomi had expected because of what the Lycan Queen had done to her people earlier. But there's more to this, more to the way the queen hadn't dared to close the distance between her and her people. There was more to the fact that Sakura only ever called her guards to pick up the bodies of the dead, and yet when Ataru and the high guards rushed in, they could see Kiyomi very much alive. All of this was new to them. Lock her up with the dead bodies we accumulated, Sakura ordered as she walked out of the room, leaving a shocked Kiyomi wondering what the fuck the woman meant this time. There was never knowing with Sakura, and frankly, that horrified Kiyomi. No! Sakura heard Kiyomi scream as she was dragged out by the Lycan guards. She hated that the woman was a screamer, and yet at the same time, Sakura was angry for some reason. She never understood what it was about, but maybe if she slept, there would be no such thing again, right? Shut her up, the Lycan queen growled in frustration before she went to the balcony to be with her thoughts. Her heart was still beating, and that was something that Sakura couldn't explain. It was so new and infuriating. She had no one to talk to about it, and she hated that this was something so confusing for her. She had lived her life without any heartbeats, and now suddenly one pesky, troublesome doctor was making her heart beat. Oh, she hated this. Your Majesty, Otaru said when he reached the balcony where the queue was. He could sense the angry waves coming from her, and he couldn't only hope that her rage didn't get directed at him. What is it? Is it the prisoner again? Sakura asked as she watched the sun in the horizon. The entire night went by so fast, with her and her people out there in Odanera, watching the hospital and everyone that was in it. Some of her guards had gone to find out what was happening, and expectedly they had still been looking for Kiyomi. Sakura never understood what it was about the doctor that got so many people angry. Of course, Sakura's reasoning was understandable to her. She hated rogue Lycans. It was that simple, and yet somehow the woman had gotten her forcing a contract on her, and now there was a heart resting on her chest. Oh, how Sakura was angry. We injected her with a sleep potion. She wouldn't shut up, and the others said she had been screaming the entire night. Otaru reported to his commander, who just stared at him like that was not enough for Otaru to interrupt her as she watched the sunrise. She is her, isn't she? Otaru asked, and Sakura stared at the sun coming up in the distance, like she was hand-threading her warrior. It was something that was so new for him, too. But then what else could they do when their queen wasn't one to open up? Did you place her in the den of the rotting bodies? Sakura asked instead, and Otaru sighed. His master had never been done to avoid questions, and yet here she was pretending like she had heard him. Yes, Your Highness, Otaru said, and Sakura let out a frustrated breath. That should teach her to shut up and lay low. The stupid woman lived her entire life in pain, and now she found herself in another pickle. Who can be that dumb? Sakura asked frustratedly, and Otaru stared at the queen like he hadn't heard her right. Sakura Watanabe, the self-righteous queen, the woman who never cared about how many lives she ruined, was suddenly worried about a woman, a doctor she had ridden to kidnap and bring back alive and unhurt. I'm sorry, what? Otaru asked as she stopped right in front of her queen, blocking her view of the sun. On most days, Otaru would be dead before he even stopped that close, but the queen was just staring at him and rolling her eyes. It's too early to see your face, Otaru. Get out of my face, the Lycan queen said, and her enforcer stared at her like she had gone bonkers. Clearly, there was more to this, but is Sakura open to that discussion right now? You found her, didn't you? That's why you had us go back to the hospital and erase any hints of her existence there. That's why you didn't want anyone looking into her disappearance from the hospital, so we made it seem like she... Otaru rambled on, and his queen growled at him. Just shut up, all right? And go find someone else to bother. I had worse things to keep in mind. Tell everyone not to get their eyes off of her. Don't feed her, clothe her, or show her any kindness. If she tries to put up a fight, be at your worst with her. She is just like all the women and men who signed that oppressive contract. Just another tool for my endless pleasures, Sakura said to her enforcer, though the last bit came off like a disappointed, angry mumble. Sakura was never going to change, that much she had been sure of, and yet somehow, as her enforcer asked her questions so simple, she was suddenly not sure of what to respond with completely. How the fuck was she supposed to tell Otaru that she had felt the tiny little object in her chest pump blood in her system for the first time in forever, and that it was making her want to stay here a little longer than she planned to? How was she to make Otaru understand that there was a chance that the woman she had brought in was her Ira's tie and mate, even though she had been taught she would never have one and that she was never going to be loved. Sakura had believed a lot over the years, and she had gotten to live with the horrors of what people saw her as. She wasn't going to defend that, but goddamn, she was curious about the doctor she had dragged in. "Are you getting attracted to the new prisoner, Ataru? If you want to fuck her, you can go ahead," Sakura said, even though there was some warning in her voice, something that the people closest to her knew so well. Sakura was daring Ataru to touch that which she had claimed, and her enforcer was smart enough to never fall into that trap. He had seen some of the best warriors lose their lives because they didn't know how to translate the queen's tone whenever she spoke. The soulless queen could say anything, but then the secret was in her tone. Once anyone understood that tone, they would be able to make it through life with the queen. Otherwise, life would be an endless hollow tunnel. "Nah, she's not my type." "She fits you so well," Ataru said, and Sakura scowled at him, but that didn't bother him. He was used to her in so many ways. If there was anyone who could pass for the Mad Queen's best friend, then it would be her enforcer. However, titles were never a thing for the Lycan Queen, especially when it came to those she considered close. Sakura had trust issues, and she had long learned that people were replaceable, so she never got attached. Perhaps that was also why it was easier for her to get contracts with people who could give her the pleasure she needed, and then dump their bodies if they didn't do it well, or if she simply got bored along the way. "You should go see her while she is still asleep, Saki. You have been looking for her for so many years, even if you won't admit to it. You don't have to agree with me. So go find out if she's her, or if we are to go hunt for someone else. You know I would walk on fire for you, right?" Ataru said, and Sakura rolled her eyes at her enforcer. She intentionally chose to ignore the fact that Ataru was the only one who could call her Saki and not lose his neck in the process. "You're getting annoying. Go to that hospital and get me all the information on what she did and why they want her dead. I need to know if I can screw her before handing her over like the cheapskate she is," Sakura said dismissively. Ataru just shook his head at his queen's words. He could tell that Sakura didn't want to talk more about the woman in their dungeons, and he wasn't going to push. After all, she was his queen and commander, right? "Well then, if you'll excuse me, Your Majesty," Ataru said as he bowed and before leaving. Sakura watched Ataru's back fade into the distance, and for a moment she wondered if he was right about the woman in her dungeons. She had taken a liking to Kiyomi Kimura because the woman had so many problems. The disgraced doctor was her perfect target, someone nobody would miss, someone no one would fight for, and more than anything, someone she could do whatever she wanted to do with and wouldn't be bothered. The good doctor was feisty, that much Sakura had to keep in mind, but it was the challenging fact that Kiyomi had given her in the few hours they had interacted that got Sakura excited. She may have been a queen, but she loved games. "Your Majesty, you have a call from the Ivanovs," one of the high guards said to Queen Sakura as she sat on the balcony. She had been trying to make it all make sense, and while she was never going to admit it, she loved the thump on her chest each time her heart beat. It was something she wanted to enjoy listening to, and it made her excited deep down. "Who are they?" the Lycan Queen asked passively as she stared at the beauty that was Odanera City. Her balcony gave her access to the best of views, and frankly, she wanted to stand here for the day, enjoying the sound of her heart beating. "The Russian mob that accused Dr. Kiyomi of murdering their leader," the High Guard responded, careful not to piss off his queen. He was standing a few feet away from the Mad Queen because he knew he could easily be reduced to ketchup by the woman. "Answer it," the queen said, and the High Guard stared at her in shock. "Me? Do you want me to teach you how to answer a damn phone, warrior?" "My apologies." "Your Majesty." "Put it on speaker." "Yes, Your Majesty." Watanabe Holdings. The High Guard spoke as he looked at his queen, who was waiting to hear who was on either side of the phone, not to mention the fact that this was a test of whether the High Guard could handle himself. Sakura could see the high guard shaking, but his voice was steady, something that got her amused. She had never thought people could do that, but then she didn't care at the moment anyway. "I'm looking to reach Miss Watanabe," the voice on the other side said. He had a Russian accent, and the high guard knew it had to be the Russian mob. No one was ever brave enough to dial the Watanabe Holdings line unless they were desperate. "Do you have an appointment?" the high guard asked. "No, but if she hears about who's calling, she will want to call us back," the voice said, and Sakura snickered. Men always had some nerves assuming what she would do. She had a feeling that this was about to be because of Kiyomi, but then she would wait it out. "Who is calling?" the high guard asked, feigning curiosity even though he was trying to stay alive when the call ended. "The Ivanov mob. Tell her we have a proposal for her, and we would love to have her on board," the voice said, like that was supposed to make Sakura change her mind about whatever the person needed. "Tell him I'm not available and I don't deal with petty little mobs. If he needs my attention, he should come with 500,000 human dollars worth of gold. Otherwise, he can look for another Sakura," the Lycan queen said. The high guard stared at her, unsure of what he was supposed to say to the man. The Russian clearly heard her, but then the high guard was following orders. So meekly, the high guard repeated those words to the caller on the other end. "How about $1 million in gold to meet with her?" the Russian asked, and the high guard stared at the queen. "Tell them we'll send them a location once the gold is received. Should be before the end of day, or they can look for another Sakura," the Lycan queen said, even though she knew she was never going to like the humans. Sakura knew humans were pesky, annoying little creatures, and the fact that she had heard of the Ivanov Russian mob made her wonder who the humans thought they were. If she wanted to take out the Russian mob, the queen would simply need just 10 of her high guards, and she would have control of the damned city and even the humans. However, she wasn't here to acquire power over humans, or was she? "Great. There are 5 gold bags in front of the Watanabe building at the moment. We will come for the meeting in 3 hours, at a location of your choosing. I suppose that should be enough for you to verify the gold and their worth, right?" the Russian stated determinedly. Sakura let out a laugh at how certain the man was. She wasn't even bothered by the possibility that this could be a fraud. After all, she was Sakura Watanabe, the best of the worst creation, right? "Looks like I have 3 hours to play with my new pet, huh?" Queen Sakura chuckled darkly as she patted her high guard on the shoulder before she headed to where Kiyomi was at, leaving the high guard letting out a breath he had been holding for so long.